Brandon Beane making moves here, the first pick into the second round. And I think what this is going to do, it's going to give us some time to sit back, to take calls, to not be under the clock, potentially trade back once again. There's some dynamic pieces there like Todd McConkey, even Johnny Newton. I'm a huge fan of Johnny Newton here for the Buffalo Bills too. But really, I think this really shows you what the Buffalo Bills attack is every draft, right? I think there's a plan in place. They put their value on specific players. We heard Brandon Beane specifically state that there was not 28 first-round picks in this year's draft. And really, in my previous video, I spoke about the need to trade up for one of those first-round picks, but it takes two to tango. And how much are you ultimately giving up? How much value are you ultimately giving up for that player? The Bills basically staying put, moving back slightly in this year's draft to accumulate some additional draft picks, a third-round pick. I absolutely love it, and I think the Bills are poised again here to trade back from the first round. Now, we could very well stay put and take the player that we ultimately want and just surefire take that player, but we heard Brandon Beane say he's got a lot more second-round grades, total players with second-round grades than overall first-round players with first-round grades. So it's very interesting to hear that, and it's just, you consider how many players that they must have with second-round grades. So if we can select the next three players today, we're going to be selecting three players total. I think the value is ultimately there for Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills to get the players that they ultimately want. And obviously, it's clear to me that we're eyeing up a wide receiver. We still need a wide receiver to come in here to compete. I think McConkey is definitely a top choice for the Buffalo Bills. Even Troy Franklin, right? There's some other dynamic pieces that we could probably get a little bit later in this year's NFL draft. And I know a lot of people are like, why in the world would we trade with the Kansas City Chiefs so they can select Worthy? And, I look at it, and obviously we didn't have the value that maybe the Chiefs had. And you can even take a look at Rashawn Rice and the situation that they're going through behavioral-wise off the field with Rice. Like, they don't know what's going to happen there. And obviously, I think there maybe were some question marks with Rashad Rice when he came into the league with character issues. And we know that's something the Buffalo Bills refuse to deal with. You got to have a high character. You have to want to be in Buffalo. You have to have a great work ethic. So maybe the Chiefs just value things a little bit differently and are willing to risk that a player could get in behavioral issues. Now, I'm not saying that Worthy has behavioral issues by any means, but it could just be one of those categories we didn't see as highly of as the Kansas City Chiefs. So trading out of that spot, right, giving that wide receiver to the Chiefs, I think there's a player on the board that we felt confident enough to know that he was still going to be there at the 34th pick in the NFL draft, 32nd, 33rd pick in the NFL draft. Like, we were confident in knowing that this player is still going to be available. So, and you look at a guy like Johnny Newton, defensive tackle, the one reason why he's slipping in this draft is really because of his measurables. 6'2", 290 pounds, but really technique-wise, dominant, if not one of the best in this year's class. But it's just really, how high is his ceiling with his overall lack of total size? But we've seen it before. We've seen players in the past that slip in the draft that the Buffalo Bills scoop up for a very reasonable pick. And, looking at it here, I think the Bills would benefit from another wide receiver. They would benefit from a defensive tackle, a defensive end, a cornerback, even a safety, and also running back. I think the Bills could definitely be eyeing up a running back here, get the cream of the crop at the running back position, take the best of this year's draft class in the start of the second round. I think for a running back to pair with James Cook. And I think, yes, we have Ty Johnson. Yes, we have Darrington Evans. but bringing in another running back could definitely help things out. And, you know, just going back to what Brandon Beane said in my previous video, I had a feeling like the potential was there to just stay put or potentially even trade back. Like, we had to consider all of these things. You know, first thought, trade up, right? Trade up for the player that we ultimately want, give up whatever it is for this potential wide receiver. But apparently Brandon Beane didn't see the value, actually decided to stay put. None of our first round grade players were there. Decide to trade back for probably a player with a second round grade, a much higher second round grade than anyone else that we're confident to know he's going to be there when we pick. Obviously today we have the first pick left. So I'm really eyeing this up. You know, I really like the players that are still on the board. I think there's a lot of players that can definitely come in here and compete right away, especially all three of these next players that come here to the Bills. I mean, maybe we do get a wide receiver. Maybe we do get a running back and maybe like defensive end, defensive tackle to bolster that defensive line. Like, we all know Von Miller's not going to be here much longer. You know, we could use that cap, obviously, and allocate it to other places. You know, similar to what we did with Diggs, moving away from Diggs, and now we're basically under the cap. But we really have to understand, like, the players that we brought here for 1-year deals, like Curtis Samuel, 3 years, right? Like, we know wide receiver Curtis Samuel is going to be here for the next 3 seasons. Matt Collins, a 1-year deal, like, only could really be here for 2024. He's going to re-enter free agency. Maybe we get outbid and he goes to someone else. So the risk is there to lose Matt Collins after this year. And it'd be nice to bring in a wide receiver right now to develop behind Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins, to rotate in there. Brandon Beane even saying that Khalil Shakir has an opportunity to be a top 5 wide receiver. Maybe at the end of this draft, we're going to be like, oh my God, like, we never saw that Khalil Shakir was going to work on the outside or maybe take Stephon Diggs' role. He could play slot. He could play on the outside. Maybe the Bills bring in McConkey, another wide receiver here that could play slot. And then Khalil Shakir goes on the outside with Curtis Samuel and then Matt Collins rotating in there to win those 50-50 jump balls. So I think that could very well be the move here, where a lot of people are just discounting Khalil Shakir. They're having the highest catch percentage last year. I think he could easily merge into a number 1 wide receiver. And we heard Eric Moles even compare him to Marvin Harrison. They were drafted the same year, Eric Moles and Marvin Harrison. It's funny that Marvin Harrison Jr. is coming out in this year's class too. But I really am loving these moves by Brandon Beane. I totally wholeheartedly agree. They know the value. They know the players. They know if they want to come here to play in Buffalo. They know their skill sets and how they're ultimately going to help this team. Brandon Beane and Joe Brady and Sean McDermott, the synergy that we have between our whole entire staff, I totally wholeheartedly trust them. But drop your comments down below. What do you guys think is going to happen today? Which positions in the next 3 picks do you think that we're going to do? And most likely all going to be today. Absolutely huge. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit like, subscribe, check the link in the description of Course Careers. You guys can start a free introduction course to land a remote job in tech. But appreciate you. Hit like and subscribe, and go Bills.